From coming after several big names in Hollywood to finally addressing the famous Oscar slap that was heard around the world, here are some of the top moments from Chris Rock's Netflix stand-up special, Selective Outrage. Well, Chris Rock slapped back a whole year after the Oscar debacle with Will Smith. The special may not have been as shocking as Will Smith slapping him in the face, but Rock's long-awaited response had moments that were just as messy, fierce, and packed with emotion. It may just be the least rehearsed, most intriguing live show you'll ever see. He immediately started off by touching on last year's Oscars, riffing on wokeness, hypersensitivity, and what he referred to as selective outrage. He stated that nowadays, you always have to be careful with your words, because you never know when someone may be triggered. He added, anybody who says words hurt hasn't been punched in the face. Even though Rock botched a key part of a major joke toward the end, the event was a success. Normally, a mistake like that would have been cut out, but considering that this was the first live global event in the history of Netflix, all Rock could do was correct himself. That one bit may have messed up the momentum of the rest of the show, but it just added to the unpredictability of the entire thing. And the rest of the show? It was different. Rock has always been one of our time's greatest stand-up comedians.
Just girl crap, dude.
Yeah.
I have to pretend to enjoy.
Right.
I want some singing kids. That Will Smith messed it up for everybody.
That's...
Kids singing and dancing.
He's known to be a perfectionist, whose material almost always depicts a meticulous sense of control. Not this time, though. He unleashed his anger fully, coming after Smith and his wife, offering his thoughts on what really went down at the Academy Awards that night. That may have been the most controversial part of his set. He laid pretty much all the blame on Jada Pinkett Smith. It felt like revenge served as comedy. In the special, Rock said that he had only love for Will Smith. That is, until the Oscars of 2022. Referencing the infamous slap, Rock said, "And now I watch Emancipation just to see him get whooped." While Will Smith has apologized and repeatedly spoken about the incident since it happened, Rock had chosen to stay silent.
That thinks that was the right way to behave in that moment. There's no part of me that thinks that's the optimal way to.
He'd referenced the incident every now and then on his tour, but never really got into it fully. He'd stayed away from the usual platforms where celebrities go to talk about personal things. In the special, the comedian remarked that you'd never catch him on Oprah or Gayle crying about anything, especially since he didn't think of himself as a victim. But that doesn't mean he wasn't going to handle things on his own. For all those who had been waiting for Rock to come forward with a proper response to the Smiths, this special will not disappoint. Until now, he said relatively little about the occurrence, telling a few jokes here and there, but staying mostly silent on the matter. I'm guessing that's because he wanted his special to be just that, special. And oh boy, was it special. He didn't shy away from getting super personal during this particular set.
Not only was I not a good enough actor maybe 10, 15 years ago, I didn't have the gravitas. I haven't lived a life, you know what I mean? But now, I've lived a life. And
Rock even poked fun at himself, comparing his physical size to that of Will Smith. Unfortunately, that was meant to lead up to some more vicious suggestions. He offered an interesting theory on Will Smith. He eventually said that the slap was an act of displacement, meant to shift anger from his wife cheating on him onto Rock. Rock straight up said that the joke was never the issue. It had more to do with Will's misdirected anger at his wife because of her past entanglements. That was followed with some harsh words directed at Jada for not being able to take a joke, and at the couple for having selective outrage. There was a comic nastiness to the part of the set that seemed to be coming from his own bottled-up anger. But then again, if I got slapped on national television, I'd be pretty mad too. Chris finally talking about the slap was what drew people in, and was probably the highlight of the entire special, even if it was just in the final 10 minutes. But hey, there was a lot more to the show. The opening half-hour teased slap-related comedy, but talked mainly about other familiar topics.
why this Oscars? It's the 88th Academy Awards. It's the 88th Academy Awards, which means this whole no black nominees thing has happened at least.
Some of them were quite worn out ones, like wokeness, trans rights, the Kardashians, and the trap of social media. And many of the jokes he told during the first half, Rock found a way to include some personal tweets. For example, a joke on trans rights could have been abstract, but Rock chose to use a detailed act out where he played his skeptical old uncle. Take the Kardashians material, for instance. It began with his frustration with the digital attention economy and steered toward them being an atypically inclusive American family. There were even digs at Elon Musk, where Rock started from outdated jabs at Musk's popularity, but then he proceeded to portray a wild and sexually explicit yet hilarious image of the entrepreneur. There were also a bunch of tired jokes about abortion and gender identification. I'm talking about the identify as poor, my pronoun is broke. All this was a bit too overfamiliar, and none of the premises were really original, but the comedian picked up momentum halfway through the show. There were a few jokes targeting Snoop Dogg and Jay-Z, but after each one of those, Rock made it clear that he was just joking. He continued, "Last thing I need is another mad rapper." That's how he kept hinting at the Smith material to come. It felt like a running theme for the show was his contempt for victimhood. He came after Meghan Markle for the same reason, mocking her surprise that the royal family is racist. He referred to the family as the Sugar Hill Gang of racism. And then finally, in the last 10 minutes of the show, he got to the set everyone had been waiting for, the slap. The set about the slap was the star of the show, but there were other shining points, like the jokes about giant corporations like Apple. He said that these companies were all for politically correct messaging, but sold products made in the worst working conditions. He also pointed to the Capitol riots, talking about white people trying to overthrow themselves. What's more, he only half-jokingly asked that the whites already run. So who were they even taking the country back from? There's more on what he had to say about Meghan Markle as well. He pulled no punches, calling her out for her poor little rich girl persona. All these topics were building up to the overarching theme of fake victimhood, especially among the privileged. So even though he hadn't addressed the assault at the hands of Will Smith, it was clear that his emotions were building up to it, and the buildup was well worth it. The crowd didn't know whether he'd actually talk about the incident or whether he'd keep it to the passive comments here and there, but Rock didn't disappoint. After 10 minutes of laying it on the Smiths, he dropped his mic after one last zinger. He said that the only reason he didn't physically retaliate to the slap was because of his parents, who taught him not to fight in front of white people. Well played, Mr. Rock, well played. Also, the special had a bunch of pre- and post-show booked performances. These were all pretty average, but star-studded with several comedy legends.
People go, "Chris, how come you didn't do nothing back?" Because I was raised. I got parents. And you know what my parents taught me? Don't fight in front of white people.
Some of them included Bono, Diana Carvey, David Spade, Paul McCartney, Adam Sandler, Jerry Seinfeld, Tracy Morgan, and Wanda Sykes. So be sure to check it out if you want all the tea yourself. There you have it. That's all I have for you on some of the top moments from Chris Rock's Netflix special, Selective Outrage.